Україна! Україна! Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
None of that, my friend. But speaking of which, we have cooperated with many different communities here. We've done joint rallies with our Sudanese friends when they were protesting against what the Wagner Group has done in their country. We have done joint rallies, many joint rallies in fact, with our Iranian friends who oppose the terrorist Ayatollah regime, who stand against it, and who've always stood against it. Unfortunately, it would seem like the Russians do not have the same grit, the same grip as the Iranians do. Sorry?
Don't forget the Syrians.
The Syrians, of course.
Turned up 18 from Mars last year.
Of course, the things that the Russian terrorist regime has done in Syria are oftentimes forgotten. But we have not forgotten, my friends. We did not forget about how the Russians leveled Aleppo. We didn't forget about how the Russians used chemical weapons in Syria. A war crime, by the way, for those who are not aware. Forbidden by the Geneva Convention. And yet they used it all the same. And they will continue to do these atrocities, left, right, and center. And for those who think that Russia only wants to be left alone, that Russia is a poor, innocent, prosecuted country that is getting surrounded by evil NATO, ask yourself, my friends, has there been a single country that was forced to join NATO? And was there a single country that joined an alliance with Russia willingly? Those are the questions you need to ask yourself. Now, of course, I can already see it happening. People will mention Cuba, for example, with its own authoritarian regime, against which people are starting to protest now, from which people are trying to flee in droves. Sometimes people forget about that part of Cuba, of this poor, innocent, prosecuted Cuba situation. But my friends, Cuba is far away. Cuba did not have to endure the full brunt of this so-called Russian friendship. Look at the countries around Russia, at Kazakhstan, at Belarus, at Georgia. Do those countries want to side with Russia? Those countries have had countless protests against Russia, against what the Russian terrorist regime has done in Ukraine. In Belarus and Kazakhstan, in particular, the Russians have crushed peaceful protests that were happening against their puppet regimes, put there by the Russian terrorist regime. Exactly the kind of thing the Ukrainians were protesting against. And the Ukrainians won in that battle against the Russian puppet regime. That is why the Russians felt like they would get away if they used conventional military in Ukraine, if they just skipped the extra steps and went for a full-blown invasion. Because in 2014, when Russia has invaded Crimea and annexed it, when Russia has invaded the Donbass and started a war there, the world did not react. Sure, a few snippets here and there, a few small sprinkles of sanctions over Russia. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, my friend. Thank you. Героям слава! Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, yes. And it's been reported that the Russians have used chemical weapons in Ukraine many times. That's true. You know, the Russians have not only done a partial genocide of Ukraine, and partial only because they did not take over the full country. The Russians have also perpetrated many situations of ecocide. The explosion of the Novokakhovka dam, that's one of them. A full-blown ecocide in the Dnipro Delta. So many species, rare species of animals, dead. Fish floating around the place. Terrifying. But that's not the only occasion where the Russians have perpetrated ecocide. They have blown up a large ammonia pipe in eastern Ukraine, releasing that poisonous ammonia into the forests. And of course, we all know very well that the Russians will not stop there. As Putin said many times in the past, Russia has no borders. It will not stop until it is stopped. It will not stop pushing until there is pushback. And it is time for the West to realize this and finally get a grip once again and finally take initiative in the current situation. We all know this very well, that Nazi Germany did not need to have a direct border with the United Kingdom to engage in the Battle of Britain, to do the Blitz against the British people. Where it was the people of this country who had to hide in bunkers, hide in their tube stations, in their underground. The people of this country know what it is to appease an authoritarian leader. That is why the United Kingdom has been one of the countries that has helped us the most. However,